Welcome to Really American. I am Michael Hayne. Remember when I was discussing how Garbagey Green and Looney Laura Loomer were going at it over who was the biggest deranged, psychotic, maggot house cat for the Lord and Savior, Orange Jesus, Donald Trump? Remember that? Well, it seems as though Garbagey is winning that battle right now, and here's why. Well, it looks like Garbagey Trader Green is out of the doghouse at Mar-a-Lardo because last night at the Alabama-Georgia football game, as that unfolded in front of thousands of fans in Tuscaloosa, one particularly hideous face in the crowd drew a lot of attention. Garbagey Trader Green. Yes, the vile ultra MAGA representative from Georgia's 14th district was spotted enjoying the anticipated college matchup, even posing with her Lord and Savior, Orange Jesus, trying to get back into the mix there, trying to get his love again. I guess he was also at the game in the home state. But you want to know what's so despicable about it? I mean, besides the photo of the two of the worst people ever, is that 11 people had died in Georgia during the hurricane. And while the state is still experiencing significant flooding, Garbagey Trader Green doing what she does best, disregarding the actual needs of her constituents so as to pay pittance and homage to the deranged leader of MAGA, her Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. She takes the photo op over actually doing her freaking job. As one user pointed out on Twitter, this is your rep, Georgia. Shouldn't she be making sure your needs are met during this emergency from a devastating hurricane that blew through? She'd rather have a photo op and kick it at a football game. Another user pointed out, shouldn't she be checking on her constituents? What a complete failure she is. Georgia, you now know where her allegiances are, and they aren't with you. And if you ever needed a tweet that more beautifully encapsulates the sociopathic, unfeeling, unthinking, unsympathetic idiocracy idiots that MAGA actually is this one right here. One user tweets, people are waiting to be airlifted from dire situations in WNC, and these assholes, MTG Green and Donald Trump, are flipping and pumping for the cameras. WTF is wrong with these shithole people? Selfish and out of touch with the nearby disaster. Fuck both of them. Well, hells to the yeah, and drinks on me for you, Abby. Nothing more wonderfully summarizes how completely and utterly tone deaf these MAGA mutants are, how incapable they are of even pretending to be a human being for a moment, or even pretending to actually do their jobs and to represent their constituents. Of course, Republican Governor Brian Kemp, with whom I disagree with, he was available. He was readily available. He was taking calls and working constantly to ensure that residents in the state of Georgia were safe and that he was following all the protocols. But these MAGA mutants are just utterly incapable of, I mean, it's not even just a matter of bipartisanship. It's just a matter of doing the very basic fundamental thing, the basic fundamental right thing, and also the very basics of governance, of which they do not have an iota of a clue or knowledge. It should also be noted that Garbagey Green, engaging in the typical MAGA tricks, brinksmanship, doing anything and everything to oppose actually helping people if it doesn't serve Orange Jesus. She voted against the government funding bill, which, as you know, would set aside money for FEMA. Like when these major hurricanes happen, because of climate change and everything, because it's been going on for the past 15 years or so, they've gotten worse and worse. Speaking of funding for FEMA and hurricanes, that Project 2025, yeah, good old Project 2025, that heaping fascist mess. Well, guess what? What's going to happen there when it comes to other hurricanes? Let's take a little bit look. There was there's a bit more in-depth look into what hurricanes will happen and look like if Trump gets in and that fascist blueprint, Project 2025 comes to fruition.
Where the divide has come, thanks to Hurricane Helene, has been the role of government. Because according to Project 2025, which is Donald Trump's plans if he takes office, Project 2025 calls for eliminating and cutting some of the agencies where the government would help prepare communities for a storm like Helene and help the communities after they've been hit. So specifically, the agency, NOAA, the agency that flies those large aircraft to take temperature readings and air pressure readings and barometric pressure readings in order to try to track where a storm is going, they would be cut. So imagine the government is actually not collecting as much data about where the storm is tracking and where it's going to hit. We would have less information to guide people in various parts of the country about, okay, the storm is coming close to you, or it's not coming close to you, it's coming over here. We would have less information because the government wouldn't be providing that service, according to conservatives. Likewise, the Federal Emergency Management Agency would have its role changed, that instead of preparing communities and helping them with sandbags and getting supplies stocked and in various areas that are about to be hit, FEMA would essentially defer to local governments, to local and state governments, and let them do that work. And then FEMA might have some role after a disaster to try to help.
Excellent points. And now this whole thing with Garbagey, isn't it kind of reminiscent of like with Ted Cruz?
Well, I just don't like the ice very much. It scares me. I pretend to be a tough guy, but once it gets a little chilly out, I head off and sneak off to Cancun.
Remember that? Yeah. And guess who actually was there? Who was helping people out? Wasn't it President Joe Biden, the Democrat? I believe, didn't Congresswoman AOC, I believe she showed up to help out? Because it just perfectly encapsulates the massive difference between the two parties. And that's why it peeves me beyond belief when I hear people say, like, oh, they're all the same. They're both the same. I don't follow politics. Well, clearly you don't follow politics because they are so utterly not the same. One could have made that argument years ago. Yes, the two parties, the differences between them used to be about the size and scope of government. But ultimately, at the time, Republicans would be available. When bad things happen to the country and when there's storms, they make sure there was funding. There was make sure the people were tended to. When it just come to these basic fundamental bread and butter issues, they were there. They would have civil discussions and ultimately compromises would be made and things would get done and people can live their lives without constantly being beholden to the domestic terrorists that is the Republican Party. Excuse me, the Trumplican Party. Because it started out as the Tea Party and now it's the Trumplican Party. And as was pointed out by David Schuster with Project 2025, hurricanes aren't just going to go away. He was not going to say, I'm going to build a wall around the jet stream and hurricanes will stop. I'm sure I kid, but he will probably say that. And that is probably what he will want to do. But they're not. We can mitigate climate change. We can worsen its effects. But what we have to do is we have to elect real leaders. And right now, those real leaders, whatever you agree with, they happen to be the Democrats. Anyway, I am Michael Hayne. This is Really American. Please subscribe to our channel and check me out on my latest TikTok at Mike Hayne Comedian. Talk to you later.